Come on. There we go. If the preview ever starts.
Everything in life is a negotiation.
Okay, I think that we are mostly good. Adjust my seat. All right. And okay, I think we're good. Everything is a little squirrely this morning. Well, not everything. I used the XSplit software that I normally use for live streaming. I had to use it for some screen capture stuff earlier this week, which means I had to get rid of the things on the screen that you see, like the little, like the logo and how many viewers there are and the little merch thing and all that jazz. And so you save that, and then you open a new one with no stuff on it. You do the screen recordings you do, and then just before you do your live show, you open up the one that you had saved, and then the Streamlabs stuff is all cattywampus and screwed up, and then you have to try to figure out how to fix it, and it's not easy, as it turns out. So good morning to there. But we'll see what we get. All right, let's see. We've got... Sleb says the hum of the mic heralds the approach. I have a new mic showing up tomorrow, and a shock mount. And I already have an interface, and I have a arm. I'll talk more about that in a little while. But got VJ Morph, we've got Emily, we've got, let's see here, who else? John Ashley Smith, I recognize. Wub to Wub Wub. People from Israel, Miami, Florida, Columbus, Georgia. Greetings from sunny Gothenburg. Guess I need to figure out if I should do some green stuffing first or go directly to painting while listening now. Well, that's a personal question. That's definitely something you got to figure out. Greece, Netherlands, Ireland, Brazil, Arkansas, Winneconne, Wisconsin, not far from here. Good morning from Edmonton. Got Archaon and the Glotkin built last night. That's a productive night. So I've got some big priming and some painting projects ahead of me today. It sounds like it. Yeah, definitely. Memphis, Tennessee, Paris, New Orleans. Hope you're doing all doing great and keeping safe. I agree. Bavaria, Nottingham, Coventry, Scotland. What the hell is cattywampus? I know I've heard it before, but what's the origin? I don't know what the origin is. It's something my mom says all the time, but it means it's all hibberty-gibberty is what it means, in case you're wondering. Let's see here. Wales, London, France. Hello from Sarawak. I'm not sure where that is. Italy, Baltimore, Grand Rapids, Oregon, Barcelona, Poland, Cambridge, Slovakia, Maryland. Hi from Montreal, Brisbane. Howdy from Jonesboro, Illinois, Maryland. We got Spain, Sweden. Still waking up in LA. It is a little early in LA, I'm not going to lie. South Africa. Good morning from Wisconsin. I just got my first Imperial Knight and can't wait to start it. I've still not built an Imperial Knight, but I have built the littler guy, the Armiger. That was kind of fun. Greetings from the Nerd Bunker in Nova, which is Northern Virginia, I believe. Painting Chaos Chaos Bears Men Blitz Bowl team this morning. Not sure what that means exactly. I mean, I know what Blitz Bowl is, and I know what Chaos is, but I'm not sure what Chaos Bears. Chaos Bears sounds scary, though. I'm not going to lie. Blackpool. Let's see here. Morning from Oklahoma. California. Building Dead Zone Pathfinders. Eating crisps and drinking beer. Not a bad Sunday. That does sound like a pretty good Sunday there, Corvus. Hi from Nottinghamshire. Or sure. I normally build and paint my Death Army, but not really been feeling that vibe with what's going on in the world, so I've started building and kit bashing cars for Gaslands. That's also, I think, a good idea, is that, especially now, even though a lot of us do have more time and things like that, because we're not able to go out and do the things that we want to do. I mean, we're still possibly working or not or whatever, but you don't get to go out and hang out with friends and do a lot of the outdoorsy maybe, or, whatever, other places things. Just because you've got the time doesn't mean that this particular project is still speaking to you very properly and making you really excited to build it. So then find something else. That's kind of, I've been kind of hopping around a little bit, but I've been trying to have some semblance of an idea which way I want to go with these things. So what else have we got? Cleaning up cobblestone castings, Neo-Soviets, and scavengers for Zona Alpha today. I've read Zona Alpha because the Osprey sent it to me, and I'm interested in it. It's a cool concept. It's kind of Eastern European skirmish, sort of very near future, and it's vaguely post-apocalyptic, but sort of not. It's an interesting place that it sits in. I like it. 20-year-old high elves on the work table today. Like they're 20, or the kid's 20 years old. That's a good question. Painting Judge Dredd miniatures today from Warlord. Have you checked out that skirmish game yet? The Judge Dredd skirmish game? I'm not sure what you're referring to there. I've seen the Judge Dredd game like at conventions and stuff, but I've not, there's no one around here that stocks it unfortunately that I know of. Symbio Joe asks, before I forget, Uncle Adam, how do you clean your makeup brushes you use for dry brushing? I'm having a hard time getting them 100% clean, so pigment from a previous project does not mix. Generally, I just kind of dip them in water a little bit and then take a clean piece of paper towel and then I just rub them across it, and just keep doing that until they're mostly dry. The downside is that it's hard to, if you've got a brush and let's say you're doing a bunch of gray on some terrain and now you want to switch and do some green dry brush on some trees, let's say, it is a little hard to do those things back to back. You should let the brush dry a little bit, because even though you've dunked it in water, first of all, you don't want to have a wet dry brush. So if you've dunked it in water to help clean it and brushed it off, it's still going to need to sit for a while. You could take a hairdryer to it potentially, especially if it's a big floofy one, because it'll take a while. I just saw something someplace, I forget where, but it showed all the different makeup brushes and what they're called. And I think that the big honkin' ones are either called blush or shade, blush or something. I don't know. Anyway, foundation. I don't know. Anyway, but it's kind of, if you wanted to do a bunch of that stuff, you either want to have a bunch of those brushes so you can kind of switch in between them, and they're frequently kind of cheap, so it's not too bad, or you're going to figure out some sort of way to dry them quicker. The pigment, I haven't found the pigment sticking around that much, but I'm also not completely coating the brush. I'm dabbing the brush, it's got a big fat head on it, so I'm dabbing the brush into the paint on my little palette, and I don't usually, when I'm doing dry brushing, I don't put paint on the wet palette for that. I put it on a piece of plastic or something like that, because I don't want the paint to be more wet because I'm trying to dry brush with it. So there's that. But I kind of dab it a little bit, and then I brush it all off on a piece of paper towel. That's where I'm doing all my, not the one that I'm going to use for cleaning it, but a different one. Multiple pieces of paper towel are kind of important. So you do that, and then I don't know. It takes some work, but it does take it. Once you figure out a way to do it, it helps. It's not like if you want to switch between a bunch of different colors, go from light yellow to red to purple because you're doing a weird dry brushing thing for a bunch of different projects maybe or whatever. It's maybe almost better to have multiple dry brushes, or you're going to have to try to figure out how to have some patience in between for that to brush to dry, because they will, or use an hair dryer or even an airbrush, try to blow through it, try to get the water out of there. David says, I like using Dawn detergent to clean brushes and models to remove any oils or releases. I've used dishwasher detergent, a drop of it on resin models to get the mold release off. I've never used it on brushes before. Interesting. fat makeup brushes are powder brushes. That's probably what the word that I was looking for. Yeah. Yeah, I love, like, for doing, especially for like little terrain pieces and stuff like that. Well, I did that video about the makeup brushes, and I had that little terrain piece. It's a little, I don't know if they make it anymore, but it's a little GW barricade. There's like a crashed like Space Marine bike in there and a bunch of other stuff. And it was just super quickly base coated in a bunch of different colors. And I just took a light gray and just went, like, within a minute, I thought it looked great. So yeah, I use that big fat powder brush all the time. If it's fat but kind of a medium size, then it's a blush brush. This might be a powder brush. It's real big. Yeah. Speaking of Mantic stuff, has anyone got any experience with Vanguard? I can't tell if it's worth looking into. I've not played it. I've watched it played at a convention a little bit. I like that they're moving into skirmish. I do. But I have not played it. What else? Any advice on painting Savage Oryx? I've got a load of paints, but have no idea how to actually paint them. So far, I've sprayed them with Citadel Green. It's a start, honestly. Savage Oryx, from what I remember, have a lot of skin. So starting with that green is not a bad idea. If it was more like the more heavily armored orcs that I can't think of the name of off the top of my head right now, then I would probably actually start with spraying them the color of the armor, and then paint the parts of the skin that you can see with a brush. But because the Savage Orcs are a little bit more savage and a little bit less armored, I would say starting with that is a good idea. Once you've done that, then I would probably look into maybe some sort of dark green wash, maybe like one of the camo color washes or something like that. And then maybe like a bit of a, either, depending on what kind of your dry brush game is like, you might want to go the light green dry brush on the skin areas, but kind of get like the skin mostly ready to go. And in that process, you may get green dry brush on parts that are not skin, because you're kind of going back and forth quite quickly. But working on the skin parts and getting them finished, and then going back and painting all the other parts that might have got skin leave-ins stuck to them is a good idea. Because if you just spray green and then start working on the armor, then when you want to dry brush the green, you're going to get green dry brush onto the armor, which you don't want. See what I'm saying? So in that situation, in many situations, it's always, and I did a video about this years and years ago, about painting from the inside out. If I was a miniature, which I assure you I am not, you would paint the skin first and then paint the t-shirt. Because if you painted the t-shirt first and then tried to paint the skin, like this part would be raised, and as you were painting the skin, you might get then skin color on t-shirt. Whereas if you are painting skin and you get skin color on t-shirt, you haven't painted t-shirt yet, so when you go back and paint it, it's you know, it's easier to paint the raised parts than it is to paint the lower parts a little bit and not get one color on the other. So in this situation, I would actually get the skin pretty much all the way done, and you'll then end up getting a bunch of extra collateral damage on the other parts, but you haven't painted them yet. So now you start painting them. You're careful around the edges so you don't get armor color or clothes color onto the skin, and then you can kind of go ahead from there. I think it's a decent way to do it, generally. John Ashley Smith says, work from the skin out, I would suggest. See, same thing. Let's see here. I used the Army Painter paint mixing balls, and geez, why did I not buy this stuff sooner? I think it's interesting that it's like relatively recently that people have finally started, like, you know, yeah, Army Painter sells like this little blister pack full of these little metal balls, and you put them into whatever paints you use, and then when you shake the paint, it agitates the paint more because it's got a ball in there, and that's really kind of cool. So yeah, you can find those. I've seen them at basically any shop that's got like the big Army Painter hobby rack has got those balls generally. And also, they also now sell, I've seen as well, dropper bottles. So instead of needing to go on eBay and try to, you know, source dropper bottles or AliExpress or any of those places, Army Painter sells them as well too. Let's see here. Dr. Robert Kelso says, I literally just watched your video on picking the primer color for the project. I think it's super important. I really do think that you can save yourself a bunch of time if you decide to pick the right primer color and then, if you can find the right primer color and you can pick the right primer color, you can save yourself at least a step, if not a bit more, by priming in the right color. So the project that I did yesterday, where I was working on the Warcry terrain, instead of priming it all black, some pieces I primed black because they're predominantly more stone, and other pieces I primed brown because they're predominantly more wood. And then that way, I didn't have to, if I would have primed everything black, then the wood stuff, I would have had to paint at least a base brown and then dry brush up and all that kind of stuff. This way, it's already brown, and then I can just start dry brushing straight up. Or I may also, I'm kicking around the idea of maybe trying to do some more airbrushy kind of stuff. Like, there were certain pieces I was going to do zenithal highlighting on anyway of the stone bits. Like, all the stone stuff is more, well, let's see here real quick. All the stone stuff here that you can see is more black, because I want the stone stuff to be gray. I've seen a bunch of people painting their Warcry stuff in crazy colors, and I don't usually like to paint my terrain in crazy colors because I want my models to stand out more than the terrain. So, like that big giant head, some people I've seen do it in metal. I want to make it look like it's stone. But definitely that big head I was going to zenithal prime, so I was going to be spraying it from above with white, but I would be using my airbrush for that on the indoors. But I'm thinking about doing that also with a lot of the wood as well, maybe, and seeing where I can go from there. Yeah, so picking the right primer is super duper important, I think. Super duper important. Tech Priest Mogamus says, I spray AdMech with Xandri dust so I don't need to paint inside the robes. Also a good idea. When you are looking for ways to create efficiencies, look for the problem areas in the models that you're going to be painting. Adeptus Mechanicus, there's a lot of inside the robes shenanigans going on in those guys because they're all wearing robes and it's kind of hard to get up inside there. So if you're priming them with something, whether it's a rattle can, or better yet with those guys, honestly, it's easier to prime them with an airbrush. Yeah, then definitely trying to figure out what color works best in that situation, it does help a ton. Greetings from Hungary. I always look forward to your videos. They are great to listen to while painting. Well, thanks. That's kind of the hope, is that people can get me getting some hobby done and listen to me answer people's questions and things like that. I've been thinking about doing the airbrush route, but I haven't convinced the wife yet. I was working on the basement just recently and came across something that I had kind of forgotten about. And now is not a great time, unfortunately, because Amazon is a little squirrely. But about a year ago, I bought an airbrush kit on Amazon that was at least one brush, if not maybe two, and a compressor, and it was $90. So I kind of wanted to test it out and see if it was worth the $90 or whether I wasted my money, and maybe make a video about it. And then I forgot about it because I was making videos about other stuff. Excuse me. Like I said, right now, not necessarily the greatest time, because if I convince people like, hey, this isn't actually a half bad deal or whatever, it's hard to get stuff currently off of Amazon. Like, I've ordered a couple of things recently off of Amazon that they're like, yeah, like it used to be like, oh, you get it in 2 days. If you got like 3 days, you were like, I can't believe it took 3 days. Now it's like, well, you'll get it in June. I'm like, all right. Although I've also found in some situations, at least with Amazon recently, and I haven't ordered a bunch of stuff from them, but I have ordered a couple little knickknacks here and there for video stuff. They have, to some degree, like they'll say, oh, you're gonna get it in late May, and then they'll be like, oh, actually we're sending it a bit earlier, but it depends. Some things that they've also pushed back, and some, it's kind of squirrely. Shadow Threader says, I just prime in black 99% of the time. I mean, if you're gonna zenithal highlight, I'm kind of with you there. Like, if I'm painting a lot of stuff, I do have a tendency also to prime in black in miniatures, but then I dust them from above with a white. Although I've been using lately, instead of white paint or white primer, I've been using white acrylic ink from Liquitex, and I just put in a drop of... It's a tip from Caleb Wissenbeck, who is a very, very good airbrusher. He uses the Liquitex acrylic white ink. He puts in a drop of flow improver with it and a drop of matte varnish, and then kind of mix that all up a little bit in your cup or your airbrush, and then you go to town. and it makes a real nice white zenithal highlight. But you can also sometimes, instead of using black as the base color, you could use brown with a white zenithal, or brown base with a tan zenithal. I mean, there's a lot of different options. It all depends on what you're trying to paint and what you're going to be doing with it. The black and white combo is specifically really good for, especially then if you want to go back in either with glazes, contrast paints, secret weapon washes, stuff like that, instead of throwing over regular paints. I mean, you're still going to use regular opaque normal paints, usually for skin tones sometimes, the metallics, stuff like that, certain colors, but these last 3 warbands that I've been painting for a couple different indie games, I kit bashed that first one. There's an Instagram video of the warband that I did for Star Breach. Actually, I was setting up another video that I'm going to do for the second warband. They're finished. I was doing that yesterday in the studio. I got to go back and finish today. The lighting was taking way longer than I thought. And then it was dinner time. And then I have a third warband. Well, it's actually technically 2 warbands for another game, and they're going to be in a battle report eventually. And those guys also, again, primed them black, dusted them from white from above, and then went in and did all the coloring and stuff like that. Actually, a lot of contrast paints. I'm finding, for me, that contrast paints, the way that they want you to use the contrast paints, not for me. Like, I'm not going to spray Wraithbone or Gray Seer and then paint contrast colors. It's just not what I'm going to do. But I'm definitely using them a lot when I'm using them over a black and white zenithal. They work really well for that, actually. And there's certain colors that work in any situation. Like, I use Black Templar all the time. I use Wildwood a lot. I use a bunch of different ones. There's certain ones, and I'm going to be making a video soon about contrast paints. I was kicking around the idea of waiting all the way till June, so it's like the 1-year anniversary. I don't know, maybe. We'll see. I might do it sooner, I'm not sure. But there's certain contrast paints in certain situations that I'm really in love with, and there's other ones that I've literally used like once or twice and then haven't touched them since. And that's kind of what I talk about in the video. Differences and reasons and all that kind of stuff. Uncle Adam recently got into this hobby. I've been watching your vids for a few months. Question, what are the rules on giving any model any war gear? I ask because I made my own squats from Caradon Overlords, Necrons, and Scutari. I mean, it depends on who you play with. Depends on the group you play with. Generally, games, like if you're playing, let's say, 40K, then there are specific rules that say this squad, they're everybody either gets this gun or they get that gun, or maybe you have like 4 guys that can have this gun, but 1 guy can have a fancy gun or a heavy gun. And so there are generally rules in any game that tell you which guns you can use. Now, the question becomes, if you're kit bashing, can you just explain to your friend that you're about to play, look, this is the guy with the plasma gun. If the person is used to 40K as a game and they play it a lot, they'll know what a plasma gun looks like. So if you use a gun that doesn't look like a plasma gun, they're going to be like, all right, I'll try to remember that. Going to tournaments and stuff like that, it's something's called WYSIWYG, okay, which is what you see is what you get. A lot of people prefer to build that way so that their opponent can just look at it and go, oh, that's the guy that I need to shoot because he's got the such and such gun or whatever. But if you've completely kit bashed and tweaked stuff, you're going to have to maybe explain a little bit better to your opponent what is what. And you may also, in some situations, you may have an opponent who's just like, yeah, I don't understand that. I don't know how to play, and then don't play against that person, I guess. But generally, in casual, fun games, kit bashing is totally fine. I generally don't kit bash too much if I'm making a standard army for a standard game. Like if I'm playing Age of Sigmar, I have a tendency to play and build things the way that they're supposed to be. But I do love to kit bash. I just then use my kit bashing skills or whatever in games that don't have models. So there are plenty of games out there that you can play that you might like better. They might scratch that itch for whatever reason better than the more kind of mainstream stuff. And they're just a rule set. There's no models that are sold with this game. They're just a rule set. Star Breach is one of those. I talked about Star Breach at the end of 2019 in my kind of awards show. Zone Raiders is another one. Recently, I've been getting into Planet 28, which is this little 16-page, very simple kind of Inquisition 28 style fun game. It's very cool. Anyway, none of those games have a model line affiliated with them, so you have to kit bash and build stuff, and I love doing that. And then in that situation, you and your opponent both are kit bashing and going, well, this is the guy with the such and such, and this is the guy with that, But in 40K and Age of Sigmar and the big games that people play, I don't know if people kit bash much in, say, like Malifaux. Like, the model's usually the model. I don't know. I mean, maybe in tournaments you can't. I'm not sure. I've never played in a tournament for Malifaux. So, yeah, it depends on the game. It depends on the people you play with, that kind of stuff. I hope that answer helps a little bit. William Barnes asks, are you going to reschedule your convention? And by my convention, the Tabletop Minions Expo. So the Tabletop Minions Expo is this really super crazy tiny little convention that I've been running the last 3 years. Yeah, I think so. Last 3 years at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And it is, like last year we had maybe 70 people. But it's a fun kind of little party. People come, there's no tournaments, there's no competition. It's just like, it's all learning how to play games. Someone is like, okay, well, I'm going to teach people how to play this game. And then, people sign up to be GMs and other people then play the games, and it's a lot of fun and whatnot. This year it was going to be on the 6th and 7th, question mark? Well, no, yeah, 6th and 7th of June. It was not going to be on this date. That's not right. That's the old one. It was going to be the 6th and 7th of June of 2020. So, yeah. Let me give myself a little bit of one of those and one of those. That's fun right there. Anyway, so... yeah, well, with the pandemic, that's not going to happen. Right after, like literally in like mid-March, I got an email from the university saying, hey, we're canceling everything through June. I take that back, actually. They said, we're canceling everything through June 7th, which would have been technically the second day of the convention. So they're like, do you want us to keep you penciled in unless things get better? And I said, sure. Well, things haven't particularly gotten better as far as we can tell. So... long and short of it is, I'm not rescheduling. I am trying to kick around the concept of doing like a virtual something for 2020 for TMX. And I'm trying to nail down what that's going to be. We're a little over a month out, so I've got to kind of get that nailed down. I think it's going to be pretty ad hoc. But on the upside, more people will be able to be involved because, it's hard to come to Wisconsin if you live. VJ Morph came from Australia, which was awesome. And lots of people came some people came from overseas in the UK, some people came from West Coast, East Coast, down south, all that kind of stuff. So it's very cool that way. It's a fun little convention, but it is tiny. So I don't know. I'm going to try to figure out some of that stuff. Maybe some sort of... some tabletop simulator stuff, things like that. I don't know, but I'm trying to figure that out still a little bit right now. So we'll see how it goes. Yes, let's see here. Hi, Uncle Adam. I'm doing my first piece of terrain ever with foam core. Do I need to prime it before painting it? It might not be a bad idea. The one thing to watch for with foam core is that if you prime it with let's say a spray paint, any kind of spray primer, the propellant in spray cans, almost all spray cans, the propellant will eat foam. Now, foam core is foam sandwiched in between two pieces of like cardboard or something. I don't know, some sort of thick paper. So it won't eat the paper, but it could eat the foam that it can get at around the edges. Like if you cut out a shape and it's like a ruined side of a building or whatever, like it could it can get into that foam and sort of sink in a little bit, the propellant, and then get rid of some of it. So one thing a lot of people do is just take like PVA glue, which is just like white, like school glue, Elmer's glue if you're in the United States. It's different names all over the place. And just run a bead of it along that edge. Some people will just actually use like a watered down PVA and just paint the whole thing. Not too much water because it will make the paper kind of buckle a little bit. That, you know, I would honestly just run it along the edges so that you kind of seal that foam on the edges, and then when that's completely dry, then I would take a spray can to it and kind of start out that way. Yeah, but there's options like that. I would tell you to prime it, just because it can kind of help the paint stick a little bit better. So yeah. Let's see. What do I do when I don't want to play someone because they are always playing the same army and deck, Warhammer Underworlds, and it's no longer fun to try and win against their tournament level army? I mean, you could tell them that you're like, hey, can you switch this up? Can you play something different? And if they say, nope, I only ever play this one real bone crusher, then you'd be like, okay, cool, and you just don't play against them anymore, unfortunately. You know, it is a social contract. When you are playing against somebody, the two of you need to try to agree a little bit before the game starts. So, yeah. Hey, J-Tick, how you doing? Have you checked out the Predator Hunting Grounds on PS4? It looks really cool, like one of those survival games, but with the Predator. I saw a video. I don't think it was on the PS4 version. I think it was a PC version, but I saw a video somewhere on YouTube. That was a streamer who was playing it a little bit and stuff. It looked kind of cool. It was kind of interesting, yeah. But yeah, I haven't tried playing it yet. Honestly, I haven't. All I've been playing lately on the PlayStation has been and by PlayStation I mean all I've been playing video games in general. I had been playing Astroneer once this whole pandemic thing started because it was just really super chill and there were no monsters and it was just like, this is kind of exploration and stuff like that. And then and that was me and moderator Matt were playing it, but you can't play it at the same time because the console version, the multiplayer does not work. Like it does, but after about 5 minutes, all of a sudden one person gets really terrible lag. It's weird. It's a known issue evidently. So we would just both play like separate single player games and just chat with each other and stuff and talk about, things. And then we've also played a little bit of No Man's Sky. So again, space exploration and stuff like that. Although some people can shoot at you, I guess, like pirates and stuff. Anyway, but yeah, I do want to, like, I'm kicking around the idea, and by kicking around I mean I bought a bunch of equipment. But I'm kicking around the idea of doing some streaming. Like I'm streaming currently, obviously, so there's that. But I'm talking a little bit more on the Twitch side of it. And so I'm trying to figure out what I need to do on that end to, like, I would have to basically move this stuff downstairs, but I need to kind of get the area ready to go that I could do that. I ordered a new microphone. I ordered a shock mount for the microphone. I ordered a arm, so you can put the microphone on the shock mount. It's the microphone. This is a condenser mic. This is a Blue Yeti, one of those USB mics, which a lot of people have, and it's fine. But you can hear cats running around. You can hear, if I had the window open, you could hear cars driving around. It condenses everything. It pulls in like the room. That's what condenser mics do. Dynamic mics, which is what I ordered. It's a Rode Procaster, something like that. Those have to be sort of close to your face. When you see like podcasters like, I don't know, Joe Rogan and stuff like that on YouTube, and it's a podcast, but they're also videoing it. When that mic is close to someone's face, that's a dynamic microphone. The upside to a dynamic microphone is it only listens to stuff in front of it. So like even if they move away a little bit, you can't hear them very well, and then that means it doesn't pick up room noise and all that other stuff. So the hum that you kind of hear generally within this microphone is not the microphone's fault. It's because the PC is like right here. Like the camera's there, the PC is here, the monitor is here, and I'm here. So everything's kind of compressed. Like right now, you can probably hear the chair squeaking even, because that's a condenser mic. Anyway, so I'm kicking around the idea about doing some of that. Doing some maybe painting and hobby stuff once in a while on Twitch, and then maybe every once in a while taking a paint break and slipping in a little bit of video gamage. So we'll see. Yeah, thinking about it. So there's that. Just don't say Animal Crossing. I haven't played any Animal Crossing. I've watched a little bit of it on YouTube just to see what it's all about, and it's like, yeah, it just seems like it's... I don't know. I mean, a lot of people are enjoying it because it is kind of a calming thing, and it's and they're into that, which is fine. It looks like it's more work. Like you keep having to work for that little raccoon guy and keep giving him money. He seems kind of like a late stage capitalist, that little raccoon guy. So anyway, yeah. So not my kind of game particularly. Let's see. John Ashley Smith says, I've been playing World of Tanks Mercenaries and I ain't no good. Yeah, I played a World of Tanks game, I think, years and years ago on the PS4, and I also was not very good. Let's see. Bought some Scions and hobby stuff from my friendly local game store this week by curbside pickup. Yep. Was able to pop in. Great feeling to be surrounded by hobby for a minute. Yeah. I have not done any curbside pickup, but that's partially because a good friend of mine is a local shop owner of one of the two shops here in town. So I reached out to him and I was like, hey, do you have this one kit that I need in stock? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, can I PayPal you the money? And he says, uh-huh. And then I'm like, can you drop it off at my house on the way home from work? Because he was there he's been doing a lot of eBay. He's got a lot of storage stuff and just old stuff, so he's throwing stuff up on eBay and everything like that. So this actually has been, I don't want to say it's been good for him, but it's given him the time as a single. He's like the only employee. Like when he's there working, selling people magic cards and, paints and whatever, he can't then be in his storage thing trying to clear it out and put that stuff on eBay. So not being able to be at work right now, selling stuff to people directly has allowed him to be doing a lot of his eBaying stuff. Anyway, so yeah, he brought it by. It was very helpful. But I know that the other game store in town as well, they've been doing curbside pickup. You can call them, or I don't know if you might be able to buy it on their website too. I'm not sure, but a lot of stores are trying to do that, and it's working out so far. Emily says, I keep hearing people complaining about turnip prices. Yeah, that's again, I'm like, and again, that's an Animal Crossing thing. It's interesting as I started watching more and more about this game. I'm like, this just really seems like kind of a consumerism kind of like practice, sort of. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people who really enjoy like decorating their little house and doing all that stuff, and that's fun and that's cool. But I was always just like, what can I do something more than this or not? And it doesn't look like it, so I didn't buy it. Anyway. Robert Wilson says, quite enjoy a bit of Sea of Thieves. That's the kind of cartoony pirate one. I played that. Actually, I think I played it on PC because it's not available on PS4. I think it's only available on Xbox and PC, but I have played it a little bit. But I haven't played it in a long, long time. So I enjoyed the cool little, the pirates and the ships and all that stuff. That was a lot of fun. Nick asks, has anyone used Chimera colors or Chimera colors? I've heard they dry really matte. I've been hearing about this paint line for a while, but it's evidently super hard to come by. It sounds as if it's a pretty small company, and therefore it is, like they can only make so much at a time, and there's been YouTubers that I've been hearing talking about it, so I suspect that it's probably difficult to get. So that's kind of the trick there. Today is my wife's birthday. She listens to the channel when I do, even though she isn't into the hobby. Can I get a birthday shout out for Nellie? Happy birthday, Nellie. I hope that you're having a good day, and I hope that you don't, that my voice isn't too annoying to listen to while John is hobbying. The Animaster says, I'm glad I subscribed to White Dwarf when I did, being that it can't be got when the doors are closed. Yeah, I mean, again, well, and by the doors being closed, like, I don't know if White Dwarf was being, like, because you can't, like, up until just recently or coming soon, you weren't able to buy anything off the GW website. So there's that. And I don't know that they were shipping stuff to distributors or stores either. Now, I suspect that White Dwarf is a totally different supply chain because it's a magazine printed someplace. But who knows? I don't know if White Dwarf has been still getting shipped out during this pandemic time. So So there you go. Uncle Adam, when you see you have played Stormcast, when you see or have played Stormcast Eternal Judicators, what's the majority armed with bows or crossbows? Just starting. I haven't played against any Stormcast in quite some time. The person to ask about that actually is probably Sam. Follow Sam on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/Samson Arts, I believe. He is a Stormcast player. And like when you said Judicators, I was like, I don't know which. There's like the Judicators, there's the Prosecutors, there's the Bailiffs, there's the Accountant. All those names are like, I don't know which ones they are. But when you said crossbows and then bows, I'm like, those guys. Okay, cool. But yeah, so I don't know. That was kind of weird. But I'm not sure. I honestly don't know, and I'm not the best person, frankly, to ask strategy. So yeah, but I would check out Sam's Twitch stream. He usually streams from 2 p.m. to say 4 or 5, I think, on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Central Time. So yeah, check him out on Twitch, and he would probably be able to answer that question better than I would. Sorry. Val Peterson says, I just got last month's White Dwarf in the mail yesterday. Well, so they still seem to be sending them out. So there's that. Yeah, there's that. Issue was a week or two late. Oh, that's not too bad then. Good. So it's good to hear that that's still been shipping out, I guess. Nick says, maybe I'll just try Pro Acryl next. I've been making my way through different paint lines. I really like the Pro Acryl paint line. I really do. I actually... I used... Did I get it off my thumb? Not completely. I used the red. I don't think you can see it. I used some of the red last night on a project that I was working on. I've been using the white a lot. I've been using their silver. I think they have a gunmetal color that I like to use a lot too. Although I still, with the metallics, I do honestly prefer the Vallejo airbrush metallics just a touch more, but than the Pro Acryl ones. But the regular Pro Acryl colors, I'm a real big fan. So they're really great. I really like. They come in a nice big bottle. The twist top on them, I like. I don't know. It's like it always ends up with stuff on top, which you can wipe off. It's not that bad. I've had a harder time getting gunk out of the inside of a dropper bottle where you take the cap off. Also, the cap can go flying sometimes, and then you have to dig around for it for a bunch. Whereas with the Pro Acryl line, it's like it's almost like a mustard bottle. You know what I mean? Where you turn that thing and then you squirt it out, but the cap doesn't come off. You just turn it, and now there's like more of a hole, and then you tighten it back down, and then it tightens again. It's like that. There's a benefit also to some degree, which if you have a bunch of them all stacked up in your shelving unit or whatever, they'll probably have the color still left on each one of the tips because you can, it's kind of like when the mustard is stuck to the top of the mustard bottle. Yeah, so anyway, I like it. Let's see here. Useful G says, I can confirm that White Dwarf subscriptions are still arriving. I got Dina a 12-month sub for Christmas. Well, that's nice. Jim Tyson says, my local grocery store stocks White Dwarf. I picked up a copy with my weekly shop. That's interesting. Huh. That's, yeah, I can't think of like our grocery stores, I was going to say our grocery stores don't carry magazines anymore, but that's not technically true. But it's always like either women's magazines, like Good Housekeeping or things like that, or what magazines about like famous people, like people and stuff like that. Yeah. Anyway. Pro Acryl. They sell other tops. They have like 2 other cap options. No, really. I had no idea. Interesting. Should look into that. Randall says, I'd be surprised if White Dwarf is actually shipped from Green Bay, from Great Britain. Makes more sense to just have them printed in the region they distribute the magazine. Oh, yeah. No, definitely. But I just didn't know if they had just shut that. Depending on, like, I've got a friend who works at a printing place, and they print stuff for the government, so they're considered to be essential business, and so that's why they're still working. But there are probably some printing places, if they're not doing government stuff, then they may not be considered to be essential or whatever. So yeah, I suppose it depends on the print place, really. Nick Jones asks, "What's your opinion when it comes to undercoating wood for some bolt-action buildings I'm tackling?" I would tell you probably to use like a brown. You could use like right here the brown Krylon camouflage if you can find it over there on the right side of the image. You can also use Rust-Oleum. The Rust-Oleum's camouflage line has basically, they're close to the same colors, but not quite the same colors. Like they still have like a black, a dark brown, 2 tans, and 2 greens, but they don't match the Krylon ones. So if you're like using the light green from Krylon and the light green from Rust-Oleum and you wanted to, like you half did this thing and then wanted to do the other half of it with the other brand, they're not going to match. I will tell you that the Krylon finish is smoother. I feel as if the Rust-Oleum is a little bit rougher finish. So I'll find out how that works out for dry brushing and things like that. But otherwise, yeah, for wood, I would almost always start with something like that, with a dark brown, because then you can go back and dry brush a lighter brown, but any places that your dry brush doesn't get creates a shadow, and that shadow is a dark brown, and then it just works out well. If you were to prime it black and then try to dry brush it in a dark brown or something like that, or even a light brown, it's going to look a little weird, I think. The having the brown base as a primer works really nice for wood in comparison, so yeah. Let's see. Devin Jones says, "I just got the expansion 3 of Pro Acryl, and yeah, I find myself using them more and more." Yeah, I've been really happy with them. I really do. Terracotta 9 says, "Got my copy of Vogue Trader." Ooh, that sounds fun. White Dwarf arrived on time last month, but I live in southern England, so it's probably easier to deliver. No, that's very true. I get that point, yeah. Nick says, "So far I've used Army Painter, Vallejo, Scale 75, Watercolors, and MIG. They have all been useful for one thing or another. I like being diverse." Yeah, that was really kind of the point, to some degree, of the conversation that Sam and I had talking about paints on the channel some months back. And it was that there's no right answer. There's no like, oh, this is the best line or this is the best brand. Just about every painter that either of us knows uses tons of different colors from different lines. I generally stick with, like, I've been using, like I said, contrast paints here and there quite a bit. And I use other GW paints here and there. I like some of the flesh colors a lot for GW. Otherwise, I use a lot of Vallejo, and I've been using more Pro Acryl and Secret Urban Washes, which I'm a big fan of. I use those a lot when I do black and white zenithal stuff. Yeah, so it's. I'm trying to think if I've got anything else. I do have a couple of Reaper paints here and there that I use pretty frequently. There's a like a khaki that I like a lot from Reaper, and I also use Reaper's. They make a black brush-on primer and a white brush-on primer. The black brush-on primer I use all the time. It is basically the rim around the bottom of the base there. I always do them in black, and I always do them with the Reaper brush-on primer. The white brush-on primer, the main use I have for it is if, let's say I've primed something black and it's now got some skin and I want to start painting the skin, I will start by just using, if it's supposed to be like a Caucasian style person, I will start by using that white primer. Like the face is black because I sprayed everything black with the primer. And now once I'm done painting other parts, I will then paint the face white and then work up, and then put a flesh tone, a Caucasian flesh tone over that and then build from there. If I'm going with a darker skinned person, then I can start with a different color. But if I need to take basically black primer and turn it into something that needs to be lighter, I just use the Reaper brush-on primer, and it comes in a little dropper bottle like Reaper paints do. So, let's see. Ariel says, "I tried Watercolors and I really liked. Great price too. The only problem is that the guy that makes them is in Cyprus, and he recently stopped sending orders to the U.S. temporarily." Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of that lately. Like right now is a real rough time if you're trying to buy like cool resin bits from a lot of the Polish companies like Puppets War, Anvil Industries Polish too? Maybe. W. Artel, a lot of those companies, they just, like right now, from what I understand, I don't know if it's still going on, but for quite some time, like basically just Poland was not international shipping anymore for a while during this pandemic stuff. So that's a bit of an issue. But the hopefully that'll eventually drop, and then you'll be able to get that stuff again. So yeah. How much impact have you had on your shelves of shame since lockdown? Well, I mean, so let's see, since lockdown started, I guess technically I had one warband done before that. But since lockdown started, I've done another warband of 7 or 8 models. And then I did another, like 2 small mini warbands, one of 3 and another of 4. And also I did a bigger model. Those all need to have their bases finished, but otherwise they're basically done. And I've started on my kill team, or sorry, not kill team. I've started on my Warcry terrain, so that's like all those parts are coming from those shelves to some degree. So I guess there's that. Once I get done with the kill team Warcry terrain, then I will finish up the Corvus Cabal, which is partially built, and then I'll paint them, and then I will do what the heck are the other guys? Iron Golems. That's also for Warcry. I don't know if I will then move into doing my Tyranids for Kill Team. I kind of want to. Or I'll start working on Marvel Lunchtime Rainbow, or whatever the name of that game is. Marvel Crisis Protocol. Yeah, and see about that. So that's, again, some more shelf stuff, which is going to be good. I mean, there's not enough time in the year, I don't know, to necessarily like get rid of all the stuff on the shelf. But you know, it hopefully eventually someday. So it'll take some time. John J asks, do you tend to stow away finished models, or do you prefer to display them in the nerd bunker? I generally stow them away. I generally keep them in like foam and stuff like that. I do have one of those IKEA glass cases. It's just not built. I want to find the right spot for it, but I bought one. A friend of mine was going to IKEA, and I asked, and he had a bigger vehicle, and I was like, hey, can I give you money for that? And yeah, so I've got one, and I will probably put stuff in there. I have a suspicion that it will probably be bigger models that I'll put in there instead of putting a lot of little models. Little models will still probably be stored. I have a tendency to store stuff. Generally, I've got what's his name there? Battle Foam makes these like cardboard boxes that you can just store stuff in, and they stack nicely, kind of almost like those banker boxes, but they, and I use those a lot for storing models. Actually, I was digging through one of them yesterday because I'm working on a new website for Tabletop Minions, and I want the like main image when you first come in to be a whole bunch of models like in a scene almost. And so I'm going to be working on that in the studio because that's where all my other stuff is, and the lighting and all that jazz. So yeah, so I was digging through trying to find a bunch of different models and stuff like that actually yesterday. So Casman 83 says Marvel Lunchtime Rainbow from this time forward. It came from like I think last episode where what's his name, moderator Matt, who I think is sleeping today, he was saying that like he can remember the Marvel part, but those other 2 words just like completely leave his brain because they don't. He feels as if they don't mean anything in relation to the game, which they sort of do. Like the Crisis Protocol, each of these scenarios, I guess, is well. But it's a bit of a comic booky kind of word combination. I'm not gonna lie. Ben says, I just finished the Iron Golems myself. I don't think I'll ever be able to stand painting bronze trim again, but I'm happy with them. Yeah, normal like Chaos, like for 40k and stuff like that, kind of the same thing. Well, and even with Age of Sigmar, honestly. There's a lot of trim. Those Chaos guys that The reason that they're all kind of crazy wackadoo is because they spend a lot of time working on the trim of their uniforms, their outfits, whatever, and it drives them nuts. Yeah. Dylan says, just started this morning on my Warcry terrain. I think I have figured out I need to get an airbrush. It will take quite a while to paint it all by hand. Someone asked me about this actually. Well, someone asked in the comments, I think on Facebook before this episode happened, before this video happened. I generally, why am I out of focus? That's weird. Gotta stop leaning back so much, or leaning forward so much. I generally use the rattle cans for terrain because it sticks to plastic better. Specifically, these two lines, the stuff from Rust-Oleum and the stuff from Krylon, they have technology that sticks to plastic. It kind of binds itself to plastic. So if you're using plastic terrain, then it works real well. And the thing about terrain is it gets banged around a lot. It gets moved around a lot, gets models set on it, stuff like that. Models, we are generally a little bit more delicate with. So I can airbrush. So the person asked, well, why don't you just airbrush your terrain? Well, sometimes, it's because it would take a lot longer because there's bigger pieces or more, and it could take a lot longer. Secondly, it's also a situation of, like I said, the spray stuff sticks to the terrain way better, I find. So I like to at least do the base, like primer, in rattle can when I can. And then I like to do the rest of it potentially with airbrush or brushes. But yeah, airbrush will help you to get bigger models painted quicker. That's certainly true. Vehicles, big monsters and junk like that. Airbrush is really, really good for that. Nox Starfox asks, were you planning on doing anything special for your Corvus Cabal wings? I've been thinking about doing some sort of iridescent finish. Any specialty paint suggestions? Yeah, like I haven't found quite the right color yet. Like I kind of almost want to do... So crows are generally black. So I was thinking about just going straight black. I like crows a lot. Corvus Cabal makes sense. I've seen people do all kinds of crazy rainbow colors and stuff like that, and that's fine. Then I started thinking about these birds that they're all over the place, but we have them here, but they look different. Anyway, they're called grackles, and they're basically black, but if you catch them right in the sun, they get this sort of iridescent purpley-greeny sort of thing going on. So I'm like, cool, I should try to find one of those color-changing paints, those, whatever. And I like Turbo Dork paints a lot. They don't have anything quite that is just like black with like a purple or green sort of iridescentness to it. They have a color called Dark Net or Dark Web, one of the two, which is close, but not quite. So I've been thinking about that, but I'm not quite sure yet. I do want to do something. I'm going to keep them dark. I just don't paint real bright colors too frequently anyway, so there's that, but yeah. CM13th says that Anvil is still shipping from London, UK, but obviously they're running a smaller team. I purchased from them because I want them to exist once this is over. Yeah, I think Anvil is a UK company. But Puppets War, there's a couple other ones. W. Artel. There's a couple other ones I can't think of. Oh, Spellcrow. That's the other one I couldn't think of. I remember because I did a big order where I ordered from Puppets War, Spellcrow, W. Artel, and Anvil Industries all at the same time, which I think is why in my mind I'm putting Anvil Industries in Poland. But yeah, I was ordering a bunch of heads to do a bunch of kit bashing, so I made a bunch of orders all at once. So there you go. John Ashley Smith says, does Mantic still make their models out of that weird stuff that ignores polystyrene cement? Restic, which was like a resin plastic. That name sounds familiar. It is difficult to clean up when you are used to metal and polystyrene. I don't know if they do or not anymore. I swear that they moved to more sprue-based kind of plastic stuff, but I'm not 100% sure if all their stuff's gone that way or not. I'm not sure. Jason asks, are there demons in Kill Team? Yes. You either have to get the rules out of some white dwarf that was out sometime in 2019, or the Kill Team Annual has, I think, the rules in it for demons and also Sisters of Battle, I think. So, yeah, that's the way to go with that. Let's see, what else have we got? Turbo Dark Net. That's the name of that's the name of the paint. What do you do if you find out you missed a gap when building a miniature? I, of course, fixed the gap, but I'm always unsure whether to reprime. Honestly, I don't know that you need to reprime. If you've primed the model already, then you find the gap, and then you put some sort of putty or something in there. Depending on how it works, like if it's, you could probably easily just kind of go over it with the paint, the next layer of paint. It depends again if you're doing more of a zenithal highlight, then you're probably going to want to go back and prime, because otherwise you're going to have like green stuff or putty color, showing up in your because when you're using zenithal highlights very frequently, you are then using very transparent paints to do the color. So in those situations you want to probably go back and prime. Zingbo says Cromlech is Polish. I think I might have ordered from Cromlech as well during that. Yeah, I went a little ham one day and just ordered a whole bunch of stuff from a bunch of different companies, but it was mostly all heads and like guns and a bunch of different kit bashing supplies. And I know I own Cromlech stuff. I want to say I think my orcs with fezzes, the orc heads with fezzes, I'm pretty sure are from Cromlech, but those I actually bought at Adepticon 2019 or 2018. So, yeah. Jonathan says that crows will do the same color change. Plaid makes color shift paints. I bought some with the idea of thinning it with flow improver and reducer, then shoot it the coats over black. Yeah, I should look into that. Let's see here. Nox Star Fox says, love Rust-Oleum. I like using the Island Blue Paint Plus Primer for the base of my Thousand Suns. That's kind of cool. I like their plain gray primer for a generic color. It's very easy to paint down or lighten. Honestly, for the Rust-Oleum, I've only ever used the camouflage stuff. I don't know that I've used any of the other colors for primer. Well, no, I take that back. They make a filler primer that I used on 3D printed stuff. Excuse me. Like 3D printed terrain. I've used their filler primer on that stuff, and I've had pretty good luck with that. Daniel says, I got the new Kings of War starter from Mantic. Everything was polystyrene except for 2 characters and some larger models. Those were PVC. There you go. Nick asks, is it possible to make a kill team out of an existing 40k army like Tyranids? Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, like all of Kill Team's armies are based off are 40k models. So that's very different from Warcry, where Warcry, like, they have made a bunch of models, and also Necromunda. Necromunda is all about, we have Necromunda models for the Necromunda game, but you can't like go, I don't think you can just be like, oh, I'm going to bring in some Space Marines, or I'm going to bring in some, whatever, Eldar. I mean, you can write the rules however you want to do it if you want to do it that way, but if you're following the rules, I'm not sure that works out. Kill Team is all about using 40k models. So, like my Tyranids are some Gene Stealers, some Warriors, something else. But you can take a Lictor, you can take Termagants, I think. There's a bunch of different things. Like, you can't take everything. Like, not everything that's available to Tyranids in 40k is available in Warcry. And it's the same with any other army. But yeah, like Space Marines, Imperial Guard, Sisters of Battle, Demons, like all the Chaos guys, Death Guard, regular Chaos, Thousand Suns, Tau, Orcs, like all those guys are available in Kill Team. But it, like, again, not everything in the entire line is available. So like Kill Team is like, there's no vehicles, that kind of stuff. It's mostly all the more troopish type folks, maybe some elites here and there. That's pretty much the way that works. Can you revitalize Citadel paint from 20 years ago, completely dry? If so, will distilled water be sufficient? Water is not the best thing to thin dry acrylic with. You may try to find acrylic paint thinner if you can. and see if that'll do the job. Or even sometimes you can find acrylic paint medium. It's hard. When it's completely dry, it's real hard to bring back acrylics because, I mean, that's kind of the point, is that when you paint an acrylic down, acrylics are water soluble, but once they're dry, they're kind of not. Like they don't, you can't just like wash off acrylic paint as easily as you can thin it or wash it off your brush while it's still wet. Like once it's dry, it's kind of locked down a little bit, so that's kind of difficult. What do you think about FDA? I think it's FDM, 3D printer quality for, unless that's a different type of thing, printer quality for tabletop miniatures. How far is it from commercial quality as Reaper Minis, for example? FDM printers, meaning the kind with the filament. There are certain printers where you do a bunch of work and set up a very certain specific profile, and you can print 28 millimeter models that are not bad. Resin tends to look better. Resin printers tend to look better, but they have their own kind of set of things that you have to be okay with. Like there's more of a smell in a lot of situations. There's more mess in some situations, stuff like that. I made a video about that quite some time ago. I own a couple of FDM printers, but I've never used them to print a normal 28 millimeter model. I've only ever used them for within gaming for terrain. Generally, you're going to see a lot of ridges unless you really dial in your stuff. Like I've seen like the Ender 3 Pro, there have been people out there who've been using very specific combinations of, you know, the nozzle and the right type of filament and the right type of settings and all this stuff and blah blah blah, and gotten pretty good looking like normal 28 millimeter models. They're not bad. Even resin though doesn't compare to normal, you know, plastic miniatures, you know, that we get from companies like Mantic and GW and Malifaux and all that kind of junk. There's just no comparison to detail. The detail is really the most, like the sharpness of the detail is the most important thing, at least in my mind. Brandon Dollar says, you need grackle paint. Yeah, I do. That'd be sweet. I wish I had some of that right now. I like that. Someone should make grackle paint. I think that's a good idea. Hey, Uncle Adam, have you heard of using golden paints for mini painting? I've seen eBay Miniature Rescues use it for glowing eyes. I've bought some to try and make glazes / contrast paints. Golden is a paint brand. You'd think it was the color, but it's actually just the name of the company, Golden. They are generally aiming a little bit more towards the art market than the miniature market, but they do make, they make a airbrush medium that I've used before, where I've taken like a normal paint and then some golden airbrush medium and then turned it into airbrush paint, whatever the normal paint was. Yeah, I've used that. I think that's the only golden that I've used, but I've seen, yeah, there are people out there who use that stuff as well. It's a different type of paint, sort of. Like a lot of like artists' acrylics are very different than miniatures acrylics. A big portion of it's the size of the pigment. If you're painting on a canvas, you don't need super crazy fine pigment because it's not designed to be on a canvas that's this big, whereas your models are. You know what I mean? So yeah. Oh, yeah. One of the differences I was talking also about Warcry is that, yeah, Warcry, you have these models that you can buy that are specific to Warcry, but you can also use Age of Sigmar. So that's what's different. Like, each of them is different. Like, you've got Necromunda that just uses Necromunda models. You've got Kill Team that uses 40K models. And now you've got Warcry that uses their own models, but you can also use Age of Sigmar models. So you have all these different choices, which I think is interesting. But VJ Morph just brought up that the Age of Sigmar factions in Warcry are so much better than the Chaos Warbands. As far as like competitively, I expect that to be true. Like, I'm gonna do the Corvus Cabal and the Iron Golems because I think they're really interesting, but I'm also gonna do Night Haunts for Warcry as well because I like painting Night Haunts and I like Spooky Boys. So there you go. Randall says, I hate grackles. They're a menace here in Dallas. Yeah, when I was in Austin last year, I saw grackles all over the place, but they're different than the ones we have here in Wisconsin. The ones we have here in Wisconsin kind of look like crows, just like small. Like they're like I don't know, they're blackbirds and they're small, whereas crows are like large in comparison. Grackles in Austin have like weird tails. They're a lot longer, like bigger. They just have way bigger tails. They were like ill proportioned in some fashion. When I was looking at them, I'm like, huh, what the heck birds are those? And I asked somebody that I was hanging out with, and they were like, oh, those are grackles. I'm like, oh, well, they don't look like grackles back home. But yeah, and evidently they don't care. Evidently, grackles don't care in Austin. They will just be like, whatever, dude. You know, like they're not afraid of people. They'll steal your French fries or whatever. I guess. Yeah, I just saw somebody recently complaining about grackles who lives in Austin. I think it was someone from Rooster Teeth. They were talking about grackles. Maybe on one of their many podcasts. Let's see. Those birds you refer to as grackles are called purple martins with the iridescent plumage. Oh, that sounds it. That purple martin. That sounds, I don't know, grackle. I like the word grackle, but purple martin is a pretty cool name too. What is the first game you plan on playing when this is all over? I'm assuming you mean like person to person, like, yeah, that kind of thing. I don't know. That's a good question. I see myself probably playing. It'll either be maybe some Kill Team, because I'm thinking about who I would play with in this local area. It'd either be Kill Team. If I have all my Warcry stuff, I might try teaching somebody Warcry. Most of my friends don't play Warcry, so I'm going to have to be the guy who's like, all right, you're going to learn how to play Warcry now. So there's that. But yeah. Legionnaires says, I just saw the title when I joined, and there is no priming here. Humidity jumped up to 90% last night. Yeah, when it's real humid, it's not great priming weather. I will give you that. Let's see. I see a lot of people that build sci-fi/fantasy/horror/movie figure model kits use the Golden brand paints to good effect. The only person I watch on YouTube who does that kind of stuff, like bigger kits that are not gaming related, is what's the heck is Dr. Faust. Dr. Faust's painting clinic. I've seen him paint like bigger. They're not like busts. They're like these kits you can get. That's like Boris Karloff or like that kind of stuff, or the Wolfman and things like that. And he works on those and does cool stuff with them. Creature from the Black Lagoon, whatnot. But he generally still uses like normal miniature paints, at least that I've noticed. Let's see here. John Ashley says, John Ashley Smith says, I got a box of those iron golems, not painting them red. Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to do my iron golems yet. I'm kind of thinking about keeping them a little bit monochromatic, like a lot of metallic, and then, I was thinking about then just being like, oh, then I'll just hit them with the AK Interactive Streak and Grime and just do some enamel wash. But I got to make sure that I don't just only ever do enamel wash anymore. Like these last bits that I've been working on, these last two warbands for Star Breach, and then the two warbands, the small warbands that I'm doing for Planet 28, all of those models have been enamel wash with my airbrush, and then rub off the enamel wash and all that stuff. And I really like the effect, and I think it works really well for those games, but it doesn't. If all you got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, one of those situations, and I don't just want to always just be like the guy who just does enamel washes anymore, even though I love the effect. But I think it needs its time and its place. So, DJ Morph says, I think I want a 1.5 hour live stream of Adam just saying grackles over and over again. Grackle, grackle, grackle. I don't know that anyone else wants to have that besides you. Maybe that's just you. Maybe that's just you and me. I don't know. Let's see. Nick asks, have you looked at Relic Blade? Yeah, actually I played Relic Blade with Malev 3 weeks ago. It was a Sunday. We played it in Tabletop Simulator because he lives in Salt Lake, I think. So yeah, it wasn't like we just like got together. But yeah, so Malev Shinobi is a musician, but also a really good painter. You can follow him on Twitch as well. But he's also kind of a demo guy for Relic Blade. Sean Sutton, who's the guy who does all the artwork, does all the sculpting, does all the rules, does all the, he's kind of one man band. But Malev works with him and does a lot of demos and stuff like that and whatnot. Anyway, so he gave me an intro to Relic Blade on Tabletop Simulator because Sean made a bunch of assets for Relic Blade on Tabletop Simulator. It's cool. It's a neat system, and I have the box, like the original main box, the starter box, whatever. So I've got a bunch of the models. I've just not painted any of them yet. What do you think about purchasing third-party models for use in GW games if there is no noticeable difference? Well, if there's no noticeable difference, then they are probably pirated or knockoff. You know what I mean? Like if it's like, oh, hey, these are recasts. So if you look at it and go, this is a Space Marine, it's exactly the same as a normal Space Marine, except that it didn't come from Games Workshop, it came from a Chinese factory and it's made out of resin or whatever, then that I'm against. I don't like recasts. It's illegal. And it's taking money away from the people who did the original work. So I'm not a recast fan. If you are using some other company, like let's say Puppets War, just as an example, I follow them on, I don't know, Facebook or Instagram or something, and they've been coming up with their own like dudes in power armor, but they don't look like Space Marines. But they're Space Marine-ish, but a dude in power armor is a dude in power armor. Anyway, like if you were like, I'm going to use those guys instead of using normal Space Marines, and you redid your entire army that way or whatever you did, then I don't have a problem with that personally. So like, I'm not one of those guys that says if you're going to do Imperial Guard, you have to use the right models and all that stuff. If you use something from Mantic, if you use something from wherever, as long as we can get on the same page and I know that this guy's the plasma guy and this guy's the radio guy and stuff like that, then that's fine. But if you're talking recasts, I'm against recasts. They're not cool. Magba says, "Hey, Uncle Adam, good to see you healthy and safe." Well, thank you. Good. I'm glad to be safe, and I hope that everyone else out there is also being safe as well. Guillermo says, "I have a roller coaster of humidity down here. Sometimes I wake up at 30%, then shoots up to 80% during the day. Then I get days where it is locked at 85 plus with 100 degree weather. That doesn't sound fun to me. I don't enjoy it. Like we get in the summer here, it gets humid, 80s, 90% humidity, quite a lot in the summer, July, August. But right now it's kind of gorgeous. I don't know what the temperature is out right now. Let me see. Touching the thing with the app. It is currently 63 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's fine. And does this app tell me what the... No, it doesn't tell me. Wait. Oh, humidity is 32%, so that's not bad. Yeah, if I had more stuff to prime, I would do it today. But yeah, humidity is definitely a thing because you can get real... If it's super, super dry, and if you're priming with a rattle can from a further distance away than maybe you should be, the paint particles will actually almost dry before they hit, and then things can look real dusty. So that's kind of a problem. Yeah, that's the downside. I know a lot of people say, oh, you can prime outside in the winter, 20 below. It doesn't affect it. I'm still not a big fan. Partially, I don't want to hang around outside when it's 20 below, number one. So there's that. Number two, the trick is that you like have to keep the paint warm in the house. A lot of people will take like a bowl of water, put it in the microwave, heat it up, and then set the can in there so the can and the paint are nice and warm. Keep the model in the house, and then you run outside, spray, and then you bring the model back in the house. I don't ever like to bring the model back in the house like after I've sprayed it, even like yesterday when I did a bunch of spraying, like in the stuff that you can see in the title card here. Like I sprayed all this stuff. That stuff's all in the garage because I want it to outgas overnight before I bring it in the house. When you spray a rattle can onto something, you're spraying the paint, but you're also spraying a bunch of the propellant, the propellant that makes the paint fly out of the can. And the propellant is the majority of the stink. So after you have sprayed the model still smells like propellant for quite some time, and then you need to let it sit, and then it outgasses, and the propellant turns to air or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a spray can scientist. But long story short is the next day, if you go up and sniff that giant Sigmar head that's in the middle there, it won't smell as bad as it does, say, half an hour after you spray it. So I like to let the stuff sit outside for a while. Anyway, that's where I'm at. Randall says, my iron golems, I'm doing black and silver. Yeah, I can see that. That works out well. Let me see here. Fungazi says, my friends are trying to get me into 40k, but it's super intimidating. I'm afraid I'll give my guys the wrong paint scheme or the wrong weapons, and I'll be stuck with a bad army. Any advice? Honestly, I would look into seeing if your friends are interested in Kill Team, because with Kill Team you're still using 40k models, but your warband for Kill Team, or your Kill Team for Kill Team, is like it can't be any more than max 20 models. So if your friends have already got armies for 40k and you say, hey, let's play Kill Team, then they can probably just grab models that they already have and use the ones that they already have to make a Kill Team. Just grab a little bit of this and a little bit of that from their big army, and then boom, make a little small Kill Team, and there you go. Whereas then you can say, okay, I want to use this, this, and this, and then you have yourself a Kill Team. Like, I've got Kill Teams that are as small as, my smallest Kill Team I think is 5 models, and that's my Death Watch Kill Team. My Death Guard Kill Team is 6 models. I think my biggest Kill Team is maybe Imperial Guard. I think I've got an 11 or 13 model Kill Team. That's 100 points. That's a 100-point roster. So, it's the hard part about big army games, and one of the reasons why I'm just not playing them as much is because you're right. There's times when you're like looking at it and you're like, okay, well, I want to build these groups and these squads, and each squad needs to have one guy with a flamethrower, and this squad needs to have a guy with a plasma gun and all that stuff, or whatever the deal is. And then you start playing and you're like, oh, geez, no, I should have done this or this or this. And it's just, it can be problematic. And a lot of people go online and try to figure out, well, what's the best thing? And then it becomes net listing. People are like, oh, well, the meta is that you want to run, heavy plasma. Okay, cool. Well, then I got to do this and this and this. And then you find out, well, actually that's the meta in this area of the country, but over here where you live, it's everybody does this, or yeah. So I prefer the smaller kind of skirmish games because it for me at least specifically, I'm able to wrap my head around it a little bit better. So that might be something to look into. See if your friends are interested in trying out Kill Team. Yeah. Getting directly, like jumping, one of the reasons that Games Workshop specifically is making games like Necromunda, Kill Team, and Warcry is because it is very daunting to jump directly from not playing miniatures into 40k or not playing miniatures into Warhammer Fantasy, as it used to be, say, 5+ years ago. You had those two choices. You either didn't play or you got into these two big army games, one of the other. Well, now you have these kind of smaller, kind of bite-sized sort of stepping stone type games, which can lead you in. You can also play one of the best, I think, gateway games out there. I made a video about this a while back, is Warhammer Underworlds. Warhammer Underworlds is great because those models, there is no, oh, I need to tweak it like this or tweak it like that. The models go together one way. The models are the models. You can tweak your cards in your deck and do stuff like that, but you don't have to mess with the models and change up, oh, this guy needs an axe or this guy needs a sword. You don't have to worry about that. So that's sort of nice too. The upside too then is that those war bands in Warhammer Underworlds can then be put into Age of Sigmar. If you get into the Age of Sigmar, you can just take that whole war band and they're like a squad that can go into your whatever army, depending on the army that you play. So that's very cool. So yeah, definitely I would talk to them about Kill Team and see what they think. That's what I would start with. Yeah. David Moffat says, I could take about a 20-minute Grackle show. Grackle show sounds like some, I don't know. The old Grackle show. Let's see here. What else have we got? I got a little bit behind. Hey, moderator Matt's here. Gray Primer says another T-shirt idea. Don't let Grackles eat your spackle. That's it's just fun to say, but I don't know if it's a good T-shirt. I'm not sure. Because I that does remind me though. I got to get better spackle though. I have some spackle, and it's really super lightweight spackle, and it's not working as well as I would like for what I'm trying to use it for in terrain. It's too thin. It's too, I don't know. It's almost like foam. It's not great. I should get the thicker stuff. Let's see here. Imagine playing Magic the Gathering cards printed off a laser printer. Good God. I mean, people do it sometimes, like to proxy. You know, like I've seen people do that because they're like, I'm going to get this card soon, but I want to see if I should spend the money, like expensive cards. So they sleeve all their cards anyway, so they just print out the right card, sleeve it, play amongst their friends and stuff like that to get the feel for it, and then be like, okay, cool, yeah, I am going to buy that card because they want to play in a tournament. Well, like at tournaments, I guess, you got to have the right card. At least most tournaments, I guess. Official store ones and stuff like that. So then you spend the $40 or $80, or who knows how much the card might cost, but you didn't just buy it and then find out it didn't work well in your deck. Like proxying like that, I totally understand. Now, you can't, I don't know that you would do that with recasts, because like you wouldn't buy the recast, paint the recast just to find out that yes, I do like that model, and then go buy the real one. That doesn't track particularly, but yeah. Let's see. Any interest in the Elder Scrolls game coming out soon? Looks good for solo fun. We'll make a change from Rangers of Shadowdeep. I know that Guerrilla Miniature Games, Ash Barker's channel, he's been doing some of that the Elder Scrolls stuff. I've looked at the rules. I think they sent me a copy, not a printed copy, but like a PDF. And so I was looking at the rules. I don't know. There's a lot of cards. The game's got to be just right for me to have a lot of cards these days. I don't know why. Yeah, like the cards make a lot of sense in Warhammer Underworlds, but if there was like a lot of cards that were required in, say, something like Kill Team, I would be like, yeah, you know. So I don't know. It depends on the game. We'll be very interested to see like when I finally eventually get my Car Wars Kickstarter. Who knows when that's going to be, of course, now with all the shenanigans. That one's also going to have a lot of cards, and it's going to be interesting to see whether I handle that well or not. I don't know. Michael McWaters says, do we know if Teespring is up and running? I placed an order of one of your shirts, and it's been in the printing part of the tracker for like 2 weeks. They are working, but they're working because of the virus a bit slower. So yeah, that's unfortunate. But yeah, it is. They are working, but they are taking a little bit longer for production, from what I understand. You're not the only person that's mentioned that. So yeah, that is because I think that they are starting to try to do. Are they doing face masks now? I don't know. I think also they just don't. They can't have as many people in the factory or whatever, you know what I mean, where they make this stuff. So yeah, it is a little bit slower from what I understand right now. Hello from a fellow Wisconsinite. Hello, how you doing? Don't think this is in response to me, but it says, don't know if they could carry a coconut a length of creeper tied to the dorsal guiding feathers. I'm not sure what that's all about, but it's a weird sentence, and I enjoy it. Have you ever used Army Paint or Rattle Can? Oh, sure. Yeah, I've used the bone color a bunch. I've used red. Have I used the blue? I might have used the blue, but I know I've used the bone color, like the skeleton color. I've used that a ton, and the red I've used as well. I like that too. Let me see. For paint scheme, you just find the paint scheme of your chapter online. As for wrong guns, don't worry about it. Always model for the rule of cool. Death Rattle asks, is that a cello case behind you? Whoop, wrong way. Yes, that is Nick Raimondo. Let's see here. Jonathan says, I lucked out. We bought a house with a garage. There is a shop space at the back of the garage. The garage is well insulated. Even in the freezing weather, the garage is staying around 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, that's not bad. Yeah, then you can prime out there as long as you don't, you know. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I wish our garage was a little... Like, our garage is not... There's no insulation. Like, honestly, I'm pretty sure that raccoons have the run of the garage because there's a spot towards the back where there's, like... It doesn't quite come down perfectly to the foundation, and like I don't know that a toddler could get through that hole, but certainly raccoons could, and I'm pretty sure that they do, and squirrels. I don't know who wants to eat charcoal. Something ate the briquettes, not all of them, but some of them, in the, you know, when you're grilling out, you pour the briquettes into the grill and all that stuff. And I, like, one spring I came outside and like the bag had a hole in it, and there were briquettes on the ground. I'm like, what? Who? Do squirrels eat that stuff? That sounds like a terrible idea. That's a way to die, I think, is what's going to happen. Let me see here. Just figured out what I thought was there was a cat. It's Adam's bracelet. Oh, yeah, the bracelet kind of makes some noise. I have a tendency to usually, in the recordings that I do, I try to kind of wrap it around a little bit so it doesn't wiggle as much, but I forget to do that sometimes. Guillermo says, bit of a saving grace of using Tau. You can magnetize about 70% of the army with little problem, and the troops don't have that much weapon variety that you can just buy another box and be done. That's true with, well, maybe not the magnetizing part, but also with Necrons. Like, their base main troop doesn't have another gun. Like, the warriors use the one gun. That's it. You can get into, like, Immortals have got, like, 2 guns they can choose and stuff like that. But, yeah, there's not a lot of variation, which is a benefit when you're starting out to some degree, because you can be like, cool, I don't have to worry about, like, choosing this or that. But then later on, once you get into it, you're like, well, now I don't have any options, you know? So that's a little bit of a, like, my Necron kill team, I do wish that there was, like, a little bit more in the way of options, especially when you're trying to get, like, as close to 100 points as possible. You know, if you're trying to build it, you're like, well, I can't, you know, that's harder sometimes when you can't just be like, oh, I'll just tack an extra grenade on this guy or whatever, and then it'll be 100 points. Let me see. Oops. I swore I'd never get into a game with lots of cards, and I purchased Legion. Turns out the card management is the only negative of the game. Yeah, that's true too, yeah. Legion, you're right. It's got a lot of cards as well. It's, well... The thing that I was kind of put off a little bit about Elder Scrolls is that you've got a guy, and then you have to have, like, a card for his sword, and a card for his shield, and a card for his helmet, or all that kind of stuff. That, for some reason, I'm like, ugh, I don't know why that rubs me the wrong way, as opposed to, like, I have a unit of stormtroopers, I have a card that gives me the stats for the guy with the DLT 19, and then I have, like... special grenades, you know, like, I don't know, I think it makes more sense to me on a squad level than it does on an individual. Oh, I have to have a card for his sword and a card for his hat, great, you know, I mean, like that. I don't know why, I'm not sure why, but it just, when I was watching one of Ash's videos on the thing on Elder Scrolls, I was like, that's a little weird. Again, it may be one of those things that if I was to sit down and play it, I'd be like, okay, doesn't bother me as much, but for some reason, I don't know, it just slightly rubbed me the wrong way. John Ashley Smith asks, hey Adam, have you added anything to your Chaos Soup force recently? I almost started painting some Skaven to add to it just for grins, but then I got sidetracked and did a bunch of other stuff that is going to be a little bit more for the channel. So yeah, but I have not otherwise any other stuff, I don't think. No. Alex says, "Hi Adam, I just watched The Mandalorian and I like the idea of gaming some bounty hunter war games. Any ideas for rule sets that could be used? I'd like to kit bash the figs too, I think. Cheers." Honestly, I'm kind of doing that a little bit now with something like the next battle report that I do will have to be a solo game because pandemic. So the rule set that I'm using is a game called Planet 28, and it's made by a guy over in the UK named Nick, and it is a really small. I think it's like I said, I think it's like a 16-page rule book. He's come out with a second book now, which adds in expanded campaign rules and also solo play. But you can go on to Wargames Vault or Wargame Vault. It's either Wargames Vault or Wargame Vault. Do a Google search. I'm sure you'll find it. And you can get it as a PDF. The base game is a pay what you want. So you could just download it, or you could download it and give them $3 or whatever. I think that the second part that has the solo stuff in it is also it's maybe a pay what you want, but it's got like a little bit of a like, hey, but it's suggested. It's kind of like those humble bundle things where like you can pay what you want, but the average person's paying $6 or something like that, whatever. But they're really cool little games. They're very like the artwork is really fun because it reminds me a lot of like old school GW artwork or even old school D&D artwork, black and white like line art stuff. It's a great little system, and you like there's no models for it, so you can kit bash with it really well. And I've built a small unit of like 3 bounty hunters, and then there's going to be 4 guys that they're going to be going up against in the little plan that I have in my head for this this thing. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's a neat game system. I like it. It's nice and simple, but not too simple. It's like it gives you some customization and options and things like that, so you can build your guys the way. It's just very interesting. I like it a lot. It just came out early part of 2020, I think. Yeah, I think so. The Mandalorian. I saw, if you go look on YouTube, I think there is a behind the scenes kind of thing that shows off how they did a lot of the Mandalorian, and I didn't realize that the majority of that show, the majority of like the footage in that, it's not CG. Well, it is, but they basically made this studio that has this almost 360 degree screen that goes around. Okay, it's like 350 degrees, and there's only basically just a doorway so people can get in and out, which is why it's not the full 360. And it is, I think it's one giant or multiple LED screens. And so they go inside there with the camera and the crew and whatever, and they film, and they can make, like, there's all those scenes, if you've watched some of The Mandalorian, there's scenes where they're out in the desert and stuff and doing things. Like, they're not outside when they're doing any of that. They are just in this giant weird donut that has outside videoed onto it, and it's all done actually with Unreal Engine. So they can, like, as the camera moves and stuff like that, they can move things around, they can make stuff happen and all that stuff. And they don't even have to really light the people who they're shooting because the light is coming from the giant LED screens and stuff like that. So every once in a while they put like a key light or whatever. But for the most part, like, yeah, it was just, if you watch, there's like I guess they're going to make a mini documentary soon too, but there's a short video right now that's out on YouTube about the making of Mandalorian. You see this giant not quite 360 thing. It's really interesting. I think you could see a lot of people going in that direction in the future. The benefit is too, then you don't have to do it in post. You see what I'm saying? Like, you're there, you're surrounded by all this artwork, which is CG, but like when you do CG against a green screen, you have to then color match the people to the CG that you add in later. And in this situation, the people are automatically color matched by the light that's coming from these giant screens, and so you don't have to do any color matching particularly. Like, you might have to do some color grading, but that's, yeah. It's a really super interesting thing, and I had no idea when I watched the show that like, I just thought they were out on location a lot, but like the majority of the time they were either in a set that was like a building, or if they were outside, they were actually indoors and in this giant kind of weird round set, which I thought was really interesting. So, yeah, it was very well done. Let's see here. Ross Wolf says, I've never asked, what's the origin of Nick Ramondo's name? Did it come from anywhere in particular? It's so... I did a video quite some time ago about Necromunda when it first came out. And during one of the live shows on a Sunday, somebody mentioned that they had been watching the video and they had the closed captioning on. And normally, the closed captioning is quite good about catching what I'm saying because I must speak clear enough for it or whatever the deal is. And so it was going through and typing out all the things that I was saying, and it was working pretty well. But when it would get to the word Necromunda, it didn't know what to do with that word. So it just decided that it was it was a proper name, and so it just would say Nick Ramondo. And so it did it over and over and over again during that video, and someone was like, oh, that's... And then at that point, my wife's cello case back here had been hanging out in the background anyway, and then VJ Morph sent some googly eyes, and those went on there, and then it was decided that Nick Ramondo was his name, and so that's where it came from. But yeah, it's because of closed captioning not being able to figure out what to do with the word Necromunda. So there's that. Let me see. SoCal Astarte says, Adam, thanks for all you do. I recently finished my 2,000 point World Eater army and utilized your kitty litter basing technique. Unused, of course. Well, that's important. Worked great. Thanks for the inspiration. Well, yeah. Well, you're welcome. Yeah, I'm glad that it works. I still use kitty litter in quite a bit now. For those of you who haven't heard about it, it's not, you don't just completely coat the base in kitty litter because that would be weird because it would be really super huge and chunky. But you use little bits of kitty litter here and there as basically little rocks almost, because they are smaller than actual little rocks, depending. And it just, I don't know, it works out well. So plus, because if you use the right kind of kitty litter, it's frequently kind of a clay base almost. And when you use a little bit of CA glue, it soaks into the kitty litter and really holds it down well too, so that's helpful. Let me see. Uncle Adam says, mice or rats perhaps? They'll eat paper for sure. I got the feeling they were trying to eat the briquettes, so that's weird. And it was just a small hole. They didn't eat the whole bag. They just ate a hole in it, and then they got in there, and they pulled some out. I don't know. It's very strange. Charcoal is the new fad for toothpaste and shampoo, so maybe raccoons are ahead of the curve. Well, I almost always think that raccoons are ahead of the curve, so yeah. Let's see here. Rats, according to she who must be obeyed. I don't know that we have rats around here. I've never seen one anywhere. I mean, mice. Yeah, we've got mice. I know we've got mice in the basement once in a while. The mice never come upstairs. They're seemingly smarter than that. The 4 cats, I think, is probably what makes them go, no. Every once in a while, I'll walk from, and head this way towards the kitchen, which is over there. And I'll walk into the kitchen, and there will be 2 to 3 cats all sitting very close to the stove, looking underneath the stove, and they're all sitting very quietly. And then that's when I believe that there maybe is some sort of mouse that came up through the vent behind the stove and is now underneath the stove and going, I have made a mistake, I should have not done that. And then they eventually leave. But other than that, yeah, we generally don't ever have any mice because of the cats. Rats are just, I don't think, much of a Wisconsin thing. I mean, I know people who have rats as pets, but we don't get them, running around doing stuff much. It's more mice and squirrels and raccoons and birds. Sometimes snakes. Not too many, little garter snakes, Anyway, I don't think that the snakes ate a hole in the bag of charcoal briquettes. Let's see here. Swati asks, hey, or hi, Uncle Adam, any tips for painting hard-to-reach spots on a Mini? If the spot is almost impossible to see, don't bother painting it. That's the way that I generally do it. If it's a situation of if I can't see it, I don't paint it. There are people out there who will keep let's say Space Marines, just for an example, because they frequently carry some sort of bolter in front of them, There are people that will assemble them or build them in sub-assembly, so they paint them without the gun on, so that they can paint the symbol on their chest and do all that stuff and get real fancy, and then glue the gun over the top of it, and now you can barely see the symbol on their chest. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying you shouldn't have to feel it. You have to. I'm a big fan of just not painting stuff I can't see. Again, I'm painting for tabletop, so with a lot of just Space Marines for an example, if you're a normal trooper Space Marine, in my opinion, let's just say your chest eagle is the same color as your armor because you aren't fancy enough to have a fancy chest eagle or whatever yet. But when you have the sergeant and they don't have their gun right in front of their chest, they frequently have like a gun over here and they're like pointing over there or whatever. Well, then you can paint the chest eagle because A, you can see it and it's easier to get at, and B, they're a sergeant or a leader or whatever, and so they would have the fancier stuff. That's the way that I use my brain on it, to just be like, yeah, the regular PUDs don't get fancy extra, heraldry because it just isn't important. But yeah, your mileage may vary. That's just what I do, though. Trash pandas are the new hipsters. Yeah, I could see that too. Let's see here. I've just recently begun playing Wings of Glory / Wings of War, says Rufus. Have you played it much or at all? The models are pretty nice, but pre-painted. I suppose one could custom paint them. Yeah, I own actually a bunch of planes for the World War I stuff for Wings of War, which then they eventually changed to Wings of Glory. I like the game. I mean, it's a precursory sort of style to X-Wing, instead of having a little wheel that you then pick your maneuver with, you have 3 cards. So you're like, I'm going to do this maneuver, this maneuver, this maneuver during your turn. And they are pre-painted, but they're pre-painted pretty nicely. They really are like very nice looking models. They do good work for being pre-paints. I would say they're even better than X-Wing stuff. And X-Wing stuff looks pretty good, but I would say these generally do better. I don't know. I liked it. It's a fun little game. We've played it. We used to play it at Milk Can from time to time, like at lunch and stuff. John Evans says, quick query. Any advice for painting bright, clear colors? Everything I paint comes out dark and grim, which is generally fine for the grim dark, but limits me somewhat with other things. I am there with you. I prefer painting dark and grim. I have not painted super bright, colorful stuff. I think step 1 on painting bright, colorful stuff is priming in white. That is generally the case. You need to have a bright undercoat to put your paint over to do it. And then the next big thing really is multiple thin coats. If you put it on thick, it's not going to work as well as if you put it on in thin multiple coats. That's, I think, that's at least step 1 and step 2. I don't know particularly beyond that much more. Like I said, I don't frequently paint that way, but yeah, like probably not much in the way of washes. Probably a lot more blends than washes in that comparison. I would say, yeah, and again, like I said, definitely over white. Roland asks, quick question. I have an outdoor garage. What problems should I expect using an airbrush in a non-controlled climate? The main issue would be humidity. Depending on your compressor, when you are airbrushing, depending on your compressor, you can end up getting fluid in the compressor, which is why you get something called a fluid trap. Is that what it's called? Liquid trap? Something like that. It's this little extra doohickey that goes between usually the compressor and the airbrush, and like mine actually attaches to the side of my hobby table, and there's like a little glass bottle on the bottom, and there's a push button kind of weird thing, and it starts to kind of fill up with fluid after a while from the humidity and stuff that it's pulling in because it's compressing the air, and then there's extra, yeah. Anyway, if you have a compressor with a tank, then usually the fluid has a tendency to go in the tank. But if you have a compressor that's tankless, then the fluid ends up somewhere. Very frequently, it ends up in the hose and then out your airbrush, which you may not want, which is why a fluid trap is moisture trap. I don't know. Anyway, it's really helpful because what it does is it traps the moisture in there, and then you push that little button once in a while, and it blows out. It's almost like a spit valve on like a trumpet or whatever, and it blows out a bunch of the extra fluid. So yeah, that's the only thing is when it gets humid, your air compressor will be compressing humid air, and then the fluid has to go someplace. So that's one thing. Yeah. Brandon asks, do you have any advice for washing larger models with flat surfaces? Do you still wash the whole model or avoid the flat areas? I'm assuming when you're saying washes, you don't mean like washing off the model to get mold release and stuff off, not like soap and water, but you're talking about using a wash. Yeah, generally big flat areas. Let's say you're talking about like a tank. A bigger tank with real smooth flat surfaces, it depends. Like sometimes I'll throw a wash on the flat areas anyway, just because I know, like if it's a tank, it's dirty. I expect it to be grungy. If you are painting, I don't know, like let's say a Space Marine Rhino or an Eldar hover buggy, whatever the heck those goofy. I don't know a ton about the Eldar. One of those, they got a transport that can also shoot a zillion shots and fly, and it's way overpowered. Wave spinner? Wave serpent? Wave? I don't know, whatever. Anyway, that's got smooth, flat areas. I would not put wash in those areas. Along the panel lines, I would catch it in and stuff like that. Like Eldar stuff shouldn't, in my opinion, usually look too grungy. It should look bright and a little clowny. But so yeah, that's hard to do. Let's say a Space Marine Rhino, I wouldn't generally put the wash on the big flat panels too much because it will look a little weird. It'll pool in certain spots and then look a little grungy. Sometimes if you want a vehicle to look grungy and beat up, then it works out well. But in those situations, I'd use a big wide flat brush and I would streak down on the sides, let's say. But on the top, yeah, I probably wouldn't even put wash up there in the big flat areas. I'd only put it in the places where there's detail. Lately, I have a tendency to use I'll use an airbrush, and then like I will start by priming in a certain color, and then I will use the airbrush on the flat panels to make a bit of a gradient if I can, and then I don't need to do washes and those things if I'm trying to keep everything real clean looking. So yeah. Oh, someone's talking about Crimson Skies. Yeah, I like the Crimson Skies. I like the Crimson Skies PC game the best. There was a Crimson Skies HeroClix style game from WizKids, which was kind of cool. I sort of digged that. Dug. Anyway, I never played the original miniatures game from FASA. I never did. I saw people play it at Gen Con and stuff like that, and I thought it was really interesting, but I never actually played the original game. So yeah, for those of you that... Crimson Skies was a couple of different video games. A PC game, there was an Xbox game, there was like I said, the WizKids thing, but the original Crimson Skies was a miniatures game from FASA, which is the company that originally made BattleTech and Shadowrun and stuff like that. But yeah, that's where Crimson Skies originally came from, was a miniatures game. So there was like metal planes and stuff, yeah. JP Got Rockets says that you can still get Crimson Skies models from Iron Wind Metals. Nice. The Animaster says, I get water in my tank even indoors. Talking about airbrushing again. Yeah, moisture trap is the term. That's the word. Yeah, I do, if it's humid, even when we got the air conditioning around and stuff like that, it's still kind of a little bit more humid in the basement than it is anyplace else in the house during the summer. So yeah, if I'm doing a lot of airbrushing, like let's say I'm going to be airbrushing for an hour or two, like I'm working on a bunch of stuff, I will usually about halfway through have to like push that little valve in the moisture trap to blow out a bunch of extra fluid. Because otherwise what happens is that when you are pressing down on the airbrush without pulling back, like because if you've got a two-stage airbrush, you press down and you just get air, and then you start to pull back, and then you start to get in paint. You just press down and fluid comes out because it's extra moisture that's in your compressor. That's where that comes from. Let's see here. Andrew Jarvis asks, any advice on painting eyes? They are the bane of my existence. My advice is to don't do it. I take wash and I just put it in. I just put like a dark brown or a black wash, depending on what the model's coloring is and stuff like that. And I just put that into the eye sockets and just let it sit. Like if you look at a person from across the street, even in most situations, you don't see whites of their eyes. You just see like you would see the shadows, like because you're outside and whatever, and it's just dark in there, and that's the way it works. It's not until you get very close to the person that you see them. Like most models, I mean, there are some models where you can you can't really see this guy, but he does not have eyes that you can see. There's no whites there. Every once in a while, you can paint a model that looks okay with eyes, in my opinion. Even people who are super good at it, I look at it sometimes and I'm like, it still looks a little cartoony to me. But that's like best case scenario is it looks a little cartoony. Worst case scenario is it looks absolutely crazy because they're like looking different directions or whatever, or they got super crazy eyes, and that can be that can take you away from the model. That can take you away from the rest of the model. The rest of the model can be painted really well, but if the eyes are crazy, then it doesn't help. So that's why I generally just, at the scale that we're painting at, I generally just throw some wash into the eye sockets and let her sit. Like don't. I would tell you just don't bother painting eyes. It's a giant pain in the rear. Turkey Gurky says, this quarantine has done me no favors to my diet. Pretty sure I'm eating my feelings. I have found that like during the week when I'm working from home, I don't snack as much. I've also been trying to be better about buying snacks. Like I don't feel terrible about like, oh, I want a little snack and I just get one of those little oranges, like those little, I think they're called cuties or something like that. I don't know. They're very easy to peel, or shuck. I don't think you shuck oranges, but you know what I'm talking about. Like I'll eat one of those and they'll be like, oh, okay, well, there's my snack. But we've not been buying like a lot of chips and like cookies and stuff like that, I guess. So, yeah, I don't think I've been doing too poorly on that. Friday night, we did eat a lot of quesadillas, though, because we had a bunch of, what do you call them? The tortilla wraps. They're like a sriracha, sun-dried tomato flavor wraps. I don't know where the heck we got them from, but there was a bunch of them, and we were just like, we've been eating on them for a while. And finally, Emily was just like, so we just cranked them out, and then we had a lot. But yeah, so I got done, and I was like, whew, that was a lot of quesadillas. But otherwise, generally, yeah, somehow I've been keeping that together, so I got that going for me. Let me see. Uncle Adams, any suggestions on getting into Malifaux? I have Western minis and Khador bits, so I wanted to design my own gang. Is that allowed? I don't know. I mean, I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. I don't know that there are people out there who are doing... Like, I don't know if there's a lot of conversions or kit bashing in Malifaux. I've not ever come across it, but maybe. If you want to get started in Malifaux, I do believe that they've got a couple of two-player starters now that they've put out, so that might be a place to start too. I mean, the Malifaux models, like Malifaux seems like one of those games you don't need to kit bash because the models are also totally different, and you don't generally have like a bunch of the same model. Like it's rare. Like so everyone's like a different character. So if you want to, you could, but like every model is so different, and they're frequently kind of hard to build anyway. Like they're kind of a bit challenging to build. That it's not like, oh, I'm just bored of sticking these guys together. They're just like two pieces and you press fit. There's Malifaux models have got sometimes, not all of them, but some of them are definitely for advanced modelers. So yeah, that's kind of a thing. Let's see here. Talking about more about the moisture traps. Rufus 91 says, "I'm with you on the eyes." Yeah, I just throw a little bit of wash in there. Call her good. There's your shadow. Carlos says, "Bad eyes are worse than no eyes at all." Yep, I agree. Yep. Different Gear TV says you can buy stick-on eyes from Amazon. They even move when you shake them. Well, sure. I don't know that the googly eyes are what you're looking for, but I don't know. It'd be kind of fun. I don't know. VJ Morph asks, if you don't shuck oranges, do you jive them instead? Depends on, I guess, what's going on. I don't know. I avoid having any snacks at home, so I do not eat them, says Carlos. See, that's the thing, too, I guess, is that, like, being at work, there's, like, the snack machine down the hall, so if I'm bored, I end up down there and I end up getting a Snickers or something like that, whereas here at home, there's no snack machine, thankfully. So, yeah, we just had a bunch of green peppers and yellow peppers, and we had some onions, and we used for some dish earlier this week, and then we had a bunch left over, so we just took those and some cheese and threw them in and made some quesadillas, and they were lovely. So yeah, that was a good dinner. Google eyes for the Nurgle symbol on shields. Funny. Honestly, I've used Google eyes before on models, but I've painted over them. It's just like I need like a cool bubble or a bump here, and you can use those little stick-on Google eyes, and they work great. But then I spray over them, and then it just looks like it's like a weird bump, and that's kind of cool. You know, maybe like a sensor dome on a Tau, whatever. But the problem is, when you pick up the model, if you just shake it ever so slightly, you can hear the little Google ball running around inside there, which is fun. But yeah. Absolute Zero says, why is there no super chat option? I've never turned it on. It's just, I don't know. I just never turned it on. Mylar says, I'm totally making quesadillas for lunch now. Now I'm hungry. And it is 11 o'clock, so I'll eat lunch eventually. But right now, I want to thank everybody for coming here to the show. And I hope that if the weather's getting better in your neck of the woods, that you're able to get out and do some priming on some stuff. I'm a big fan, like I said, of using rattle can to prime terrain, but I generally, for my models, use airbrush. So your mileage may vary. Anyway, I hope everyone's staying safe, again, like I said, and staying sane and not too bored, and maybe staying away from the snacks a bit if you have to. But yeah, we'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks, again here at the Every Other Sunday show. Not going to be going into conventions or anything like that, so not going to be messing up with the schedule at all. But yeah, and then I'll keep you folks informed on whether I decide to start doing some Twitch or not, or how that works out. Or, I mean, push comes to shove, maybe I'll just get a better microphone for this normal show, because that, like I said, it should be showing up tomorrow. But I might be doing more than that too, so we'll see how it goes. I've got people I can talk to and ask questions and get advice from as well on that, which is good. All right, well, we'll see you again soon, and keep painting and stay safe, and try to have some fun. And maybe, if you like quesadillas, you might want to eat a quesadilla too.